In the summer of 2004, Bulgarian archaeologist Georgi Kitov descended into what would become one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 21st century, the Kazanlak Valley tomb complex, where beneath layers of Thracian earth, golden artifacts emerged that would fundamentally reshape our understanding of an ancient civilization that once dominated the Balkans for over a millennium. The gleaming toward necklaces, intricate silver rhyton shaped like animal heads, and elaborately decorated ceremonial armor that emerged from these burial mounds represented not merely treasure, but the material remnants of the Thracian tribes, a collection of Indo-European peoples whose sophisticated culture, military prowess, and spiritual complexity had been largely overshadowed by their more famous Greek and Roman neighbors, yet whose influence extended from the Black Sea shores to the Carpathian Mountains, encompassing modern-day Bulgaria, Romania, northern Greece, and parts of Turkey and Serbia. The archaeological evidence revealed through decades of systematic excavation has illuminated a civilization characterized by remarkable artistic achievement, complex social hierarchies, advanced metallurgical techniques, and religious practices centered around the worship of heroized ancestors and chthonic deities, all of which developed within the geographic framework of the southeastern European peninsula, where the intersection of continental and Mediterranean climates created diverse ecological zones that supported both pastoralism and agriculture. The Thracian homeland, bounded by the Danube River to the north, the Black Sea to the east, the Aegean Sea to the south, and the mountains of Macedonia to the west, provided natural barriers that simultaneously protected these tribes from external invasions while facilitating internal cultural development, yet also created corridors for trade and cultural exchange that connected the civilizations of Asia Minor with those of Central Europe. Archaeological surveys conducted across this region have revealed evidence of continuous human habitation dating back to the Neolithic period, with the earliest Proto-Thracian cultures emerging during the Late Bronze Age around 1200 BCE, as evidenced by distinctive pottery styles, burial practices, and settlement patterns that distinguish these communities from their contemporaneous neighbors. The excavations at sites such as Propericon, Southopolis, and the Rogozin treasure site have yielded stratigraphic evidence indicating that Thracian material culture evolved gradually from earlier indigenous traditions while incorporating influences from Anatolian, Greek, and Scythian sources, creating a unique synthesis that would characterize Thracian civilization. Throughout its historical development, the discovery of elaborate Kurgan burial mounds scattered throughout the Thracian territories has provided archaeologists with invaluable insights into the social organization, religious beliefs, and material wealth of these ancient peoples, with radiocarbon dating and dendrochronological analysis of wooden burial chambers, indicating a sophisticated understanding of construction techniques and a complex belief system regarding death and the afterlife. The analysis of grave goods recovered from these burial sites, including gold and silver vessels, bronze weapons decorated with intricate geometric and zoomorphic motifs, imported Greek pottery, and locally produced ceramics displaying distinctive Thracian artistic styles, has revealed the existence of a hierarchical society with clearly defined social classes, extensive trade networks, and cultural practices that blended indigenous traditions with foreign influences. The metallurgical analysis of Thracian artifacts has demonstrated that these peoples possessed advanced knowledge of gold and silver working techniques, copper and bronze alloy production, and iron forging methods that were often superior to those employed by contemporary civilizations, with spectroscopic analysis revealing the use of sophisticated alloying techniques and decorative methods such as granulation, filigree, and repousse work that indicate a high level of technical skill and artistic sensibility. The linguistic evidence, though fragmentary due to the limited corpus of Thracian inscriptions, suggests that the Thracian language belonged to the Indo-European family and shared certain characteristics with both the Phrygian and Dacian languages. with etymological analysis of place names, personal names, and the few surviving Thracian words recorded by ancient authors indicating possible connections to both the Balto-Slavic and the extinct Anatolian language branches. The geographic distribution of archaeological sites associated with Thracian culture extends far beyond the traditional boundaries of ancient Thrace, with material evidence of Thracian influence discovered in sites ranging from the Hungarian plains to the shores of the Sea of Marmara, suggesting that rather than constituting a unified political entity, the Thracians represented a cultural complex comprising numerous tribal groups that shared common linguistic, religious, and material culture characteristics while maintaining distinct regional identities and political structures. The emergence of distinctively Thracian archaeological assemblages during the Late Bronze Age and Early Iron Age periods, approximately 1200 to 700 BCE, represents a crucial phase in the ethnogenesis of the Thracian peoples, as evidenced by the appearance of characteristic pottery styles, metalworking traditions, and settlement patterns that would define Thracian material culture for the subsequent millennium. Archaeological investigations at stratified sites such as Drama, Koprivelin, and the Maritsa River Valley settlements have revealed a gradual transition from earlier Bronze Age cultures to the recognizably Thracian cultural complex, with ceramic, typological analysis indicating the development of distinctive vessel forms, including the characteristic Thracian cantharos, high-handled cups, and storage jars decorated with geometric motifs executed in burnished and painted techniques. The excavation of early Iron Age settlements has provided evidence of increasingly sophisticated architectural techniques, with the discovery of post-built structures, stone foundations, and evidence of specialized craft production areas indicating the development of more complex social organization and economic specialization. The analysis of faunal remains from these early Thracian sites reveals a mixed economy based on cattle, sheep, goat, and pig husbandry, supplemented by hunting of wild game, including deer, boar, and various bird species. While archaeobotanical studies have identified the cultivation of wheat, barley, millet, and legumes, suggesting a well-developed agricultural system adapted to the varied topography and climate conditions of the Thracian territories. The metallurgical evidence from this period indicates that Thracian smiths had mastered the production of iron tools and weapons, with technological analysis of early iron artifacts revealing sophisticated understanding of carbon content control, quenching techniques, and the production of patterned welded blades that would become characteristic of later Thracian military equipment. The burial practices documented from early Iron Age Thracian sites demonstrate the emergence of social differentiation, with elite burials containing imported goods, elaborate metal ornaments, and evidence of horse sacrifice, while commoner graves typically contain simple pottery vessels and basic tools, indicating the development of hierarchical social structures that would characterize Thracian society throughout its historical period. The distribution of early Thracian archaeological sites indicates a preference for hilltop locations, with good defensive positions and access to water sources, river valleys suitable for agriculture, and mountain passes that facilitated trade and communication between different tribal territories. The material culture assemblages from these sites reveal evidence of extensive trade networks, with the discovery of amber from the Baltic region, gold from Transylvanian sources, and pottery imports from Greek colonies along the Black Sea coast, demonstrating that early Thracian communities were integrated into broader European and Mediterranean exchange systems. The development of distinctive Thracian artistic styles during this period is evidenced by the appearance of characteristic decorative motifs on metalwork, pottery, and other artifacts, including spiral patterns, geometric designs, and stylized animal representations that would evolve into the sophisticated zoomorphic art that characterizes later Thracian culture. The analysis of settlement patterns from this formative period reveals the establishment of territorial boundaries and the development of regional cultural variants, within the broader Thracian cultural complex, with archaeological evidence indicating the emergence of distinct tribal groups occupying specific geographic regions and maintaining their own material culture traditions, while participating in the broader Thracian cultural sphere. The fortification systems discovered at early Thracian sites, including stone walls, earthen ramparts, and strategically positioned watchtowers, indicate that military considerations played an important role in settlement planning and that intertribal conflict was a significant factor in Thracian social and political development. The religious practices of early Thracian communities, as reconstructed from burial evidence and cult sites, appear to have centered around ancestral worship, fertility cults, and the veneration of natural features such as mountains, springs, and caves, with archaeological evidence suggesting continuity with earlier Bronze Age religious traditions while incorporating new elements that would develop into the complex Thracian religious system, documented in later historical sources. The technological innovations attributed to early Thracian craftsmen include advances in pottery production, with the development of fast wheel throwing techniques and specialized firing methods that produce the high-quality ceramics characteristic of Thracian material culture, as well as improvements in textile production, as evidenced by the discovery of loom weights, spindle whorls, and textile impressions on pottery that indicate sophisticated cloth-making traditions. The environmental adaptation strategies employed by early Thracian communities, as revealed through paleoecological studies and site location analysis, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of local ecological conditions and the development of sustainable resource management practices that allowed these communities to thrive in diverse environmental settings ranging from mountainous regions to river valleys and coastal plains. The classical period of Thracian civilization, spanning approximately the 7th through 4th centuries BCE, witnessed the emergence of powerful tribal confederations, sophisticated urban centers, and complex political structures that transformed the Thracian territories into one of the most significant cultural and political forces in southeastern Europe, as documented through both archaeological evidence and historical sources that provide detailed accounts of Thracian society, military organization, and interactions with neighboring civilizations. Archaeological investigations at major Thracian centers such as Southopolis, the capital city established by King Sudes III in the Kazanlak Valley, have revealed urban planning concepts that incorporated Greek architectural elements with indigenous Thracian building traditions, including the discovery of a royal palace complex, residential quarters, craft production areas, and religious precincts that demonstrate the sophistication of Thracian urban civilization. The excavation of the Southopolis site, conducted under the direction of archaeologist Dmitry Tsanchev, uncovered evidence of a planned city with paved streets, sophisticated water management systems, and public buildings constructed according to Greek architectural principles but decorated with distinctively Thracian artistic motifs, indicating the cultural synthesis that characterized Thracian civilization during this period. The material culture assemblages recovered from classical period Thracian sites reveal the existence of highly skilled craft specialists, including goldsmiths who produced the elaborate torque necklaces, pectorals, and ceremonial vessels that represent some of the finest examples of ancient metalwork, as evidenced by the discoveries at sites such as Panegyurist, where the famous gold treasure consisting of 9 vessels, weighing over 6 kilograms total, was discovered, with stylistic and technical analysis indicating production dates in the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE. The analysis of Thracian gold work from this period has revealed sophisticated techniques, including granulation, filigree, repousse decoration, and the incorporation of precious stones and enamel work, with X-ray fluorescence analysis indicating the use of high-purity gold often alloyed with silver and copper to achieve specific colors and working properties. The iconographic analysis of classical period Thracian art has identified a complex symbolic system that incorporated Greek mythological themes with indigenous Thracian religious concepts, as exemplified by the famous silver-gilt vessel from Gundestrup, which, although discovered in Denmark, displays clear Thracian artistic influence and depicts scenes that appear to relate to Thracian religious practices and mythological narratives. The burial practices of classical period Thracian elites, as documented through the excavation of elaborate tomb complexes such as the Kazanlak tomb, with its remarkable frescoed burial chamber, demonstrate sophisticated beliefs regarding death and the afterlife, with artistic programs that combine Greek stylistic elements with Thracian religious symbolism to create unique funerary monuments that served both as burial places and as markers of social status and political authority. The military organization of classical period Thracian society is well documented through both archaeological evidence and historical sources, with the discovery of weapon caches, fortified settlements, and battlefield sites revealing a warrior culture that emphasized cavalry tactics, the use of curved swords sika, distinctive crested helmets which gave rise to the term Thracian and Roman gladiatorial contexts, and lightweight shields that facilitated the mobile warfare techniques that made Thracian armies formidable opponents for Greek and later Roman forces. The economic foundations of classical period Thracian society were based on a combination of agriculture, animal husbandry, mining, and trade, with archaeological evidence indicating intensive exploitation of gold and silver deposits in the Rhodope Mountains, copper mining operations in various locations throughout the Thracian territories, and extensive trade networks that connected the Black Sea region with the Mediterranean world and Central Europe. The agricultural practices of classical period Thracian communities, as reconstructed from archaeobotanical evidence and ancient literary sources, included the cultivation of wheat, barley, millet, and various legumes, as well as the production of wine and honey, with Thracian wine being particularly prized in the ancient world and mentioned by authors such as Homer, Herodotus, and Xenophon as being of exceptional quality. The social organization of classical period Thracian society appears to have been based on a hierarchical system, with a warrior aristocracy at the top, followed by craftsmen and farmers, and with evidence suggesting the existence of slavery. Though the exact nature of Thracian social stratification remains a subject of scholarly debate, due to the limited nature of available sources, the religious practices of classical period Thracians centered around the worship of a pantheon of deities that included both indigenous Thracian gods and Greek deities adopted and adapted to Thracian religious concepts, with the most important Thracian deity being the great goddess or Thracian rider, a divine figure associated with fertility, death, and rebirth who was often depicted in artistic representations as a horseman, or as a female figure associated with natural forces. The influence of Greek culture on classical period Thracian civilization is evidenced not only through artistic styles and architectural techniques, but also through the adoption of Greek coinage systems, with Thracian kings issuing coins that followed Greek weight standards and iconographic conventions, while incorporating distinctively Thracian symbols and inscriptions that provide valuable information about Thracian political organization and religious beliefs. The interactions between Thracian tribes and Greek colonies along the Black Sea coast resulted in extensive cultural exchange that influenced both societies, with Greek authors providing valuable ethnographic information about Thracian customs, religious practices, and political organization, while Thracian influence on Greek culture can be seen in the adoption of certain Thracian religious practices, particularly those associated with Dionysiac cults and mystery religions. The political development of classical period Thracian society saw the emergence of powerful kingdoms and tribal confederations that were capable of challenging both Greek city-states and the expanding Roman Republic, with rulers such as Sitalces, Sudzai, and Codizai establishing dynasties that controlled vast territories and commanded significant military resources as documented in the historical works of Thucydides, Xenophon, and other ancient authors who provide detailed accounts of Thracian political and military activities. The Odrysian Kingdom, which emerged as the dominant political force among the Thracian tribes during the 5th century BCE, under the leadership of King Tirzi, represents the apex of Thracian political organization and cultural achievement, establishing a centralized state that at its height controlled territory extending from the Black Sea to the Aegean, and from the Danube River to the Bosphorus, encompassing an area larger than contemporary Athens and Sparta combined. Archaeological investigations at Odrysian royal centers, particularly the extensive excavations conducted at sites associated with the dynasty, such as Kabyle, Philippopolis, and the numerous royal burial complexes scattered throughout the Kazanlak Valley and Rhodope Mountains, have revealed evidence of sophisticated administrative systems, monumental architecture, and material culture that reflects both indigenous Thracian traditions and influences from Greek, Persian, and Scythian sources. The political structure of the Odrysian Kingdom, as reconstructed from archaeological evidence and historical sources, including the accounts of Herodotus, Thucydides, and Xenophon, appears to have been based on a system of tributary relationships, in which the Odrysian kings exercise authority over numerous smaller tribal groups, while allowing local leaders to maintain control over their traditional territories. In exchange for military service and tribute payments, the economic foundations of Odrysian power were based on control of strategic trade routes, connecting Asia with Europe, exploitation of rich mineral resources including the gold deposits of the Pangaean Hills and silver mines of the Rhodope Mountains, and taxation of commercial activities in Greek cities along the Thracian coast, with numismatic evidence indicating that Odrysian kings issued silver and gold coins that circulated throughout the eastern Mediterranean and facilitated international trade relationships. The military organization of the Odrysian Kingdom was based on the traditional Thracian emphasis on cavalry and light infantry tactics, but supplemented by Greek military techniques and equipment acquired through contact with Greek cities and mercenary service, with historical sources indicating that Odrysian armies could field forces numbering in the tens of thousands and that Thracian cavalry was particularly valued by Greek states as mercenary units. The cultural achievements of the Odrysian period are exemplified by the remarkable tomb complexes constructed for Odrysian royalty and nobility, including the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Kazanlak tomb, which features a domed burial chamber decorated with frescoes that represent some of the finest examples of Hellenistic painting outside of the Greek heartland, depicting scenes of funeral banquets, heroization ceremonies, and religious rituals that provide invaluable insights into Odrysian religious beliefs and social customs. The artistic production of the Odrysian period, as evidenced by the numerous gold and silver artifacts discovered in royal and noble burials, reached unprecedented levels of sophistication and technical mastery, with pieces such as the panegyrist, gold treasure, the Rogozan silver treasure, and the golden mask from the Shipka tomb representing artistic achievements that rival the finest products of contemporary Greek and Persian workshops, while maintaining distinctively Thracian iconographic and stylistic elements. The religious practices of the Odrysian Kingdom appear to have centered around hero cults, associated with royal ancestors, mystery religions that may have been related to Orphic traditions, and the worship of the Thracian rider deity, with archaeological evidence from sanctuary sites such as Propericon indicating complex ritual practices involving animal sacrifice, libation ceremonies, and elaborate feasting that served both religious and political functions in maintaining royal authority and social cohesion. The administrative systems developed by the Odrysian kings included the establishment of administrative centers at strategic locations throughout their territory, the development of standardized weights and measures, the creation of communication networks that facilitated the rapid transmission of information across the kingdom, and the implementation of tribute collection systems that allowed the central government to extract resources from subject territories while maintaining local autonomy in matters of local governance. The international relations of the Odrysian Kingdom were characterized by complex diplomatic relationships with Greek city-states, Persian satraps, Scythian tribes, and other regional powers, with Odrysian kings often playing different sides against each other to maintain their independence and expand their territorial control, as evidenced by historical accounts of Odrysian involvement in conflicts, such as the Peloponnesian War and the campaigns of Philip II of Macedon. The decline of Odrysian power began in the 4th century BCE due to a combination of internal succession disputes, external military pressure from expanding Macedonian power under Philip II, and Alexander the Great, and economic disruption caused by changing trade patterns and military conflicts that reduced the kingdom's access to the commercial revenues that had supported its political and military activities. The archaeological evidence from late Odrysian sites indicates a gradual decline in the scale and sophistication of material culture production, with fewer elaborate burials, reduced evidence of monumental construction projects, and changes in settlement patterns that suggest political fragmentation and economic decline. During the final centuries of Odrysian independence, the cultural legacy of the Odrysian Kingdom continued to influence subsequent developments in Thracian civilization, even after the loss of political independence, with artistic styles, religious practices, and social customs established during the Odrysian period continuing to characterize Thracian culture under Macedonian and later Roman rule. The scholarly analysis of Odrysian civilization has been complicated by the limited nature of written sources and the challenges involved in distinguishing between indigenous Thracian cultural elements and influences from neighboring civilizations. But the combination of archaeological evidence, numismatic studies, and careful analysis of classical literary sources has provided a reasonably detailed picture of what was clearly one of the most sophisticated and successful political entities in ancient Europe. The technological innovations associated with the Odrysian period include advances in metallurgy, particularly in the production of gold and silver ornaments and vessels, improvements in pottery production techniques that resulted in the creation of distinctive Thracian ceramic styles, and developments in architectural techniques that combined indigenous building traditions with Greek and Persian influences to create monumental structures that served both practical and symbolic functions in expressing royal power and cultural identity. The military traditions and warrior culture of the Thracian tribes represent one of the most distinctive and influential aspects of their civilization, with archaeological evidence and historical sources combining to reveal a sophisticated military system that emphasized individual prowess, cavalry tactics, distinctive weapons and armor, and ritualized combat practices that influenced military development throughout the ancient Mediterranean and European world. The archaeological investigation of Thracian weapon deposits, battlefield sites, and warrior burials has provided extensive evidence regarding Thracian military equipment, with the discovery of characteristic curved swords Sika, distinctive helmets with elaborate crests and cheek guards, lightweight shields pelt, and a variety of spear points and javelin heads that demonstrate both indigenous Thracian metalworking traditions and adaptations of foreign military technologies. The analysis of Thracian warrior burials, particularly those dating to the classical period, has revealed burial customs that emphasize the warrior's role in society, with grave goods typically including complete sets of military equipment, horse, gear, and personal ornaments that indicate the high social status accorded to military prowess in Thracia and society. The metallurgical analysis of Thracian weapons has demonstrated sophisticated understanding of iron and steel working techniques, with many Thracian blades showing evidence of pattern welding, differential hardening, and other advanced forging techniques that produce weapons of exceptional quality and distinctive appearance. as evidenced by the fact that Thracian gladiators in Roman arenas were specifically equipped with Thracian-style weapons and armor that had become symbols of fierce fighting ability. The cavalry traditions of the Thracian tribes were particularly renowned in the ancient world, with historical sources indicating that Thracian horsemen were among the most skilled and feared cavalry forces of antiquity, utilizing tactics that emphasize mobility, surprise attacks, and the ability to fight effectively both mounted and on foot, as evidenced by archaeological discoveries of elaborate horse burials and riding equipment that demonstrate the central role of horses in Thracian military and social organization. The fortification systems developed by Thracian communities reveal sophisticated understanding of defensive architecture and strategic planning, with the excavation of sites such as Propericon, Mishkova Neva, and numerous hilltop settlements throughout the Thracian territories providing evidence of complex defensive works, including stone walls, earthen ramparts, gate systems, and tower structures that were designed to take advantage of natural topographic features while incorporating advanced engineering principles. The religious aspects of Thracian military culture are evidenced by the discovery of weapon deposits in sacred contexts, the presence of military equipment in religious sanctuaries, and burial practices that suggest beliefs regarding the warrior's role in the afterlife, with archaeological evidence indicating that weapons were often ritually killed or damaged before burial, and the military equipment was frequently offered as votive gifts to Thracian deities. The influence of Thracian military traditions on the broader ancient world is demonstrated by the adoption of Thracian fighting techniques and equipment by various Mediterranean peoples, the employment of Thracian mercenaries by Greek city-states and Hellenistic kingdoms, and the incorporation of Thracian military elements into Roman gladiatorial games, where the Thracian gladiator type became one of the standard categories and was characterized by the use of distinctive Thracian weapons and fighting styles. The tactical innovations attributed to Thracian military leaders include the development of combined cavalry and infantry formations that took advantage of the mobility and striking power of mounted warriors while maintaining the defensive capabilities of foot soldiers. The use of feigned retreats and ambush tactics that exploited the mountainous and forested terrain of the Thracian homeland, and the integration of Greek military technologies and techniques with traditional Thracian fighting methods to create hybrid tactical systems that proved effective against various types of opponents. The social organization of Thracian military forces appears to have been based on personal loyalty relationships between warriors and their leaders, with evidence suggesting that military units were often organized along tribal or kinship lines, and that individual combat prowess was highly valued and publicly recognized through ceremonial rewards and elevated social status. The training and preparation of Thracian warriors, as reconstructed from archaeological evidence and ethnographic parallels, appears to have involved elaborate initiation ceremonies, physical conditioning programs that emphasized horseback riding and weapon skills, and ritualized combat practices that served both military and religious functions in Thracian society. The archaeological evidence for Thracian siege warfare techniques includes the discovery of siege works at various fortified sites, evidence of destruction layers indicating successful assaults on fortified positions, and the presence of specialized siege equipment such as catapult stones and battering ram components that demonstrate familiarity with advanced military engineering techniques. The role of women in Thracian military culture is suggested by archaeological discoveries of female burials containing weapons and armor. Historical accounts of Thracian warrior queens, such as the legendary Amazon figures associated with Thracian territories, and artistic representations that depict women in military contexts, though the exact nature and extent of female participation in Thracian warfare remains a subject of scholarly debate. The economic impact of Thracian military culture included the development of specialized weapon and armor production centers, the creation of trade networks for acquiring raw materials such as iron and precious metals needed for military equipment, and the generation of wealth through mercenary service and military raids that provided resources for supporting the warrior aristocracy and funding military activities. The evolution of Thracian military practices over time can be traced through changes in weapon types, fortification techniques, and burial customs, with evidence indicating gradual adaptation to changing tactical requirements and the incorporation of new technologies and techniques acquired through contact with neighboring civilizations, while maintaining distinctively Thracian military traditions and cultural practices. The religious and spiritual traditions of the Thracian tribes encompassed a complex system of beliefs and practices that combined indigenous shamanic traditions, mystery religions, hero cults, and nature worship into a distinctive theological framework that profoundly influenced religious development throughout southeastern Europe and the eastern Mediterranean region, with archaeological evidence from sanctuary sites, burial contexts, and artistic representations providing insights into religious practices that emphasize personal transformation, communication with divine forces, and the heroization of deceased leaders and warriors. The archaeological investigation of Thracian religious sites has revealed evidence of elaborate sanctuary complexes such as the rock-cut complex at Preparicon, which served as a major religious center for over a millennium and included throne rooms carved into living rock, sacrifice altars, ritual pools, and storage areas for religious paraphernalia, with radiocarbon dating and stratigraphic analysis indicating continuous use from the late Bronze Age through the Roman period. The analysis of Thracian religious iconography is evidenced through artistic representations on metalwork, pottery, and architectural sculpture, has identified a pantheon of deities that included the Great Mother Goddess associated with fertility and the natural world, the Thracian rider or hero deity depicted as a mounted warrior figure, and various chthonic deities associated with death, the underworld, and agricultural cycles, with stylistic analysis indicating the synthesis of indigenous Thracian religious concepts with Greek, Anatolian, and possibly Indo-Iranian religious traditions. The mystery religion traditions associated with Thracian spirituality are most famously connected with Orphism, the religious movement attributed to the legendary Thracian musician and prophet Orpheus, whose cult practices emphasize personal purification, divine knowledge, and preparation for the afterlife through initiation ceremonies and mystical experiences, with archaeological evidence from sites such as the gold leaves discovered in Thracian burials containing Orphic hymns and religious instructions suggesting widespread participation and mystery religion practices. The shamanic elements of Thracian religious tradition are evidenced by historical accounts of Thracian religious practitioners who claimed the ability to communicate with spirits, predict the future, and heal illness through ritual activities, with archaeological discoveries of ritual paraphernalia including drums, rattles, and other ceremonial objects supporting the interpretation that Thracian religion included shamanic practices, similar to those documented among other Indo-European peoples. The hero cult traditions that were central to Thracian religious practice involved the worship of deceased kings, warriors, and other notable individuals who were believed to have achieved divine status after death and could intercede on behalf of the living, with elaborate tomb complexes such as the Kazanlak tomb and Sveshtari tomb serving not only as burial places but as cult centers where religious ceremonies honoring the heroized dead were conducted by specialized priests and attendants. The ritual practices associated with Thracian religion included animal sacrifice, libation ceremonies, communal feasting, dance, music, and the consumption of fermented beverages that may have included psychoactive substances, with archaeological evidence from sanctuary sites revealing the remains of sacrificed animals, ritual vessels, and specialized cooking and storage facilities that supported large-scale religious gatherings. The seasonal and agricultural aspects of Thracian religious practice are evidenced by the timing of religious festivals, the iconographic emphasis on fertility and renewal themes in religious art, and the association of religious sites with natural features such as springs, caves, and mountain peaks that were believed to be sacred locations where communication with divine forces was particularly effective. The funerary beliefs and practices of the Thracian tribes reveal complex concepts regarding death and the afterlife, with burial customs that included mummification techniques similar to those used in Scythian cultures, the burial of horses and other animals to accompany the deceased, and the placement of gold mouthpieces and other precious objects in burials that were believed to facilitate the journey to the afterlife, as evidenced by the discovery of elaborate burial goods in Thracian tombs throughout their territories. The priesthood and religious organization of Thracian society appears to have included both male and female religious practitioners, with some evidence suggesting that certain religious roles were hereditary and that religious knowledge was transmitted through initiatory traditions that required extensive training and preparation, though the limited nature of available sources makes it difficult to reconstruct the exact organizational structure of Thracian religious institutions. The influence of Thracian religious traditions on the broader ancient world can be seen in the adoption of Dionysiac cult practices by Greek communities, the incorporation of Thracian religious elements into Roman mystery religions, and the transmission of Orphic traditions throughout the Mediterranean region, with some scholars suggesting that Thracian religious concepts may have influenced early Christian theological development in regions where Thracian cultural influence was strong. The archaeological evidence for Thracian religious architecture includes not only the rock-cut sanctuaries such as Perpericon, but also constructed temple buildings, sacred precincts within urban settlements, and specialized religious buildings associated with burial complexes, with architectural analysis revealing the incorporation of both indigenous building traditions and foreign architectural influences in the creation of religious structures that serve the complex ceremonial requirements of Thracian religious practice. The material culture associated with Thracian religious practice includes elaborate ritual vessels, such as rite shaped like animal heads, ceremonial weapons and armor that serve religious as well as military functions, jewelry and personal ornaments that had religious significance, and specialized religious paraphernalia such as masks, musical instruments, and ceremonial clothing that were used in religious ceremonies and stored in sanctuary treasuries. The regional variations in Thracian religious practice reflect the tribal diversity within Thracian culture, with different tribal groups emphasizing different aspects of the common Thracian religious tradition while maintaining distinctive local customs and beliefs, as evidenced by variations in burial practices, sanctuary architecture, and religious iconography that can be correlated with different tribal territories and cultural regions within the broader Thracian cultural area. The temporal development of Thracian religious traditions can be traced through changes in religious art, sanctuary architecture, and burial practices over time, with evidence indicating the gradual synthesis of indigenous and foreign religious elements, the increasing complexity of religious ceremonies and institutions, and the adaptation of religious practices to changing political and social conditions, while maintaining essential continuity in core religious beliefs and practices throughout the long history of Thracian civilization. The artistic achievements and material culture of the Thracian tribes represent one of the most distinctive and influential cultural expressions of the ancient European world, combining indigenous traditions with influences from Greek, Scythian, Persian, and other contemporary civilizations to create a unique artistic style characterized by sophisticated metalworking techniques, elaborate decorative programs, and iconographic systems that express complex religious, political, and social concepts through visual media. The archaeological discovery of major Thracian treasure complexes, such as the Panegyrish gold treasure, consisting of 9 vessels with a total weight of 6.16 kilograms of pure gold, and dating to the 4th-3rd centuries BCE, has revealed the extraordinary technical sophistication and artistic sensibility of Thracian goldsmiths, with detailed analysis of these objects demonstrating mastery of advanced techniques, including granulation, filigree work, repousse decoration, and the integration of precious stones and enamel work into complex decorative schemes. The iconographic analysis of Thracian artistic representations has identified a complex symbolic system that incorporated both narrative scenes, derived from Greek mythology, and indigenous Thracian religious and cultural concepts, as exemplified by the famous silver-gilt Gundestrup cauldron discovered in Denmark, but clearly produced in Thracian workshops, which depicts scenes that appear to relate to Thracian religious practices, heroic narratives, and mythological concepts that combine elements from various Indo-European religious traditions. The technical analysis of Thracian metalwork has revealed sophisticated understanding of alloy composition, with X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy and other analytical techniques demonstrating that Thracian craftsmen deliberately manipulated the gold, silver, and copper content of their alloys to achieve specific colors, working properties, and decorative effects, while also employing techniques such as mercury gilding and selective plating to create polychromatic effects on finished objects. The ceramic traditions of Thracian material culture encompass both utilitarian pottery produced for domestic use and elaborate ceremonial vessels that serve religious and social functions, with typological analysis revealing distinctive Thracian pottery forms such as the Cantharos drinking cup, high-handled vessels, and storage jars decorated with geometric, floral, and zoomorphic motifs executed in techniques ranging from simple incision to elaborate painted and burnished decoration. The textile production traditions of the Thracian tribes, though poorly preserved in the archaeological record due to the organic nature of textile materials, can be reconstructed from textile impressions on pottery, the discovery of loom weights, and spindle whorls in domestic contexts, and artistic representations that depict elaborately decorated clothing and ceremonial garments, with evidence suggesting the production of high-quality woolens, linens, and possibly silk fabrics that were decorated with complex woven patterns and embroidered designs. The architectural achievements of Thracian civilization include both monumental religious structures, such as the rock-cut sanctuary complexes and urban architectural programs that combined indigenous building traditions with Greek and Persian architectural influences, as evidenced by the excavation of sites such as Southopolis, where planned urban layouts incorporated Greek-style public buildings, with Thracian decorative elements and religious spaces that serve the specific ceremonial requirements of Thracian culture. The numismatic production of Thracian rulers provides valuable insights into both artistic development and political organization, with Thracian coins displaying sophisticated die-cutting techniques, iconographic programs that combined royal portraiture with religious symbols, and technical innovations in minting techniques that produce coins of exceptional artistic quality that circulated throughout the eastern Mediterranean and influenced coinage development in neighboring regions. The artistic influence of Thracian culture extended far beyond the geographic boundaries of Thracian tribal territories, with Thracian artistic motifs and techniques appearing in archaeological contexts throughout Central and Northern Europe, as evidenced by the discovery of objects displaying Thracian stylistic characteristics in sites ranging from the Carpathian Basin to Scandinavia, suggesting extensive trade networks and cultural exchange relationships that facilitated the transmission of artistic ideas and technical knowledge across vast distances. The workshop organization of Thracian craft production appears to have been based on specialized centers located near sources of raw materials, with archaeological evidence indicating the existence of major metalworking centers in regions with access to gold and silver deposits, ceramic production centers located near suitable clay sources, and textile production facilities situated in areas with access to wool and other fiber sources. with the distribution of finished products indicating sophisticated trade and exchange networks that connected these production centers with consumers throughout the Thracian territories and beyond. The social context of Thracian artistic production reveals the existence of patron-client relationships between elite consumers and skilled craftsmen, with the most elaborate and technically sophisticated objects clearly produced for royal and noble patrons who use these luxury goods to display their wealth, power, and cultural sophistication, while also serving religious and ceremonial functions that reinforce social hierarchies and political relationships within Thracian society. The technological innovations associated with Thracian crafts production include advances in furnace design and temperature control that enable the production of high-quality metal alloys, improvements in pottery kilns that allow for better control of firing atmospheres and temperatures, and developments in tool technology that facilitated more precise and efficient craft production techniques, with evidence suggesting that Thracian craftsmen were among the most technically advanced. In the ancient European world, the apprenticeship and training systems that supported Thracian craft production, though poorly documented in available sources, appear to have been based on family traditions and guild-like organizations that transmitted technical knowledge and artistic traditions from generation to generation, with evidence suggesting that certain craft specializations were associated with specific families or social groups and that craft knowledge was carefully guarded and transmitted only to qualified practitioners. The raw material procurement networks that supported Thracian artistic production extended throughout Europe and into Asia, with archaeological evidence indicating the importation of amber from the Baltic region, precious metals from Transylvanian and Anatolian sources, precious stones from various Mediterranean and Central Asian locations, and other exotic materials that were incorporated into Thracian artistic productions to create objects of exceptional beauty and value. The conservation and archaeological study of Thracian artistic objects has revealed important information about ancient production techniques, with modern scientific analysis, including X-ray radiography, electron microscopy, and chemical analysis, providing insights into manufacturing methods that would otherwise be impossible to determine, while also revealing evidence of ancient repair and modification activities that demonstrate the long-term use and cultural significance of these objects within Thracian society. The regional variations in Thracian artistic production reflect the tribal and cultural diversity within the broader Thracian cultural complex, with different regions developing distinctive artistic styles and technical traditions while participating in the broader Thracian cultural sphere, as evidenced by stylistic analysis that can often identify the probable origin of specific objects based on their artistic characteristics and technical features. The temporal development of Thracian artistic traditions can be traced through stylistic evolution and technological change over time, with evidence indicating periods of innovation and cultural synthesis alternating with periods of conservatism and tradition maintenance, while external influences from neighboring civilizations were continuously integrated into the evolving Thracian artistic tradition in ways that enhanced, rather than replaced, indigenous cultural elements. The complex political structures and social organization of the Thracian tribes evolved over more than a millennium, from simple tribal chieftaincies to sophisticated kingdoms that rivaled contemporary Greek and Persian political entities, with archaeological evidence and historical sources revealing governmental systems based on personal loyalty relationships, tributary arrangements, and religious legitimacy that enabled Thracian rulers to exercise authority over vast territories and diverse populations while maintaining the flexibility necessary to adapt to changing political and military circumstances. The archaeological investigation of Thracian administrative centers such as Kabyle, Suthopolis, and Philippopolis has revealed evidence of complex governmental institutions, including royal palaces, administrative buildings, archives, and ceremonial spaces that serve the various functions required for managing large-scale political entities, with architectural analysis indicating the synthesis of indigenous Thracian building traditions with Greek and Persian administrative architecture to create governmental complexes that express both practical administrative requirements and symbolic representations of royal power. The hierarchical social structure of Thracian society, as reconstructed from burial evidence, settlement patterns, and historical sources, appears to have been based on a warrior aristocracy that controlled land and military resources, a class of skilled craftsmen and traders who provided specialized services and managed commercial activities, a large population of farmers and herders who produced the agricultural and pastoral products that supported the economy, and various categories of dependent peoples including slaves and tribute-paying communities that provided labor and resources to support the political and military activities of the ruling elite. The legal and judicial systems of Thracian society, though poorly documented in available sources, appear to have been based on customary law traditions that emphasize compensation for injuries, collective responsibility for criminal acts, and the resolution of disputes through assemblies of free warriors, with evidence suggesting that religious sanction played an important role in legal proceedings, and that oath-taking and ritualized procedures were used to determine guilt and innocence in legal disputes. The economic foundations of Thracian political power were based on control of trade routes, connecting Europe with Asia, exploitation of mineral resources including gold, silver, and copper deposits, agricultural production that generated surpluses for trade and tribute collection from subject communities that provided the resources necessary to support royal courts, military forces, and administrative apparatus, with numismatic evidence indicating sophisticated understanding of monetary systems and commercial relationships that extended throughout the eastern Mediterranean and into Central Europe. The military organization of Thracian political entities was based on the obligation of free warriors to provide military service to their leaders, with evidence indicating that military units were organized along tribal and kinship lines while also incorporating foreign mercenaries and allied contingents when necessary, and that military command was typically reserved for members of the ruling elite, who combined political authority with military leadership in ways that reinforced social hierarchies and political relationships. The diplomatic relationships maintained by Thracian rulers with neighboring powers demonstrate sophisticated understanding of international politics and strategic planning, with historical sources documenting complex alliance systems, marriage, relationships, tribute arrangements, and commercial agreements that enabled Thracian kingdoms to maintain their independence, while participating in broader regional political and economic networks, as evidenced by the diplomatic activities of rulers such as Italces, Suths, and Codes who successfully negotiated with Greek city-states, Persian satraps, and Macedonian kings. The succession practices and dynastic organization of Thracian royal families appear to have been based on principles that combine inheritance rights with demonstration of military and political competence, with evidence suggesting that succession disputes were common and that the ability to maintain the loyalty of military followers and tributary communities was essential for establishing and maintaining political authority, as demonstrated by the frequent civil wars and dynastic changes that characterize Thracian political history. The administrative systems developed by Thracian rulers included the appointment of local governors to manage distant territories, the establishment of communication networks that facilitated the rapid transmission of information and orders, the creation of standardized systems for tribute collection and resource management, and the development of record-keeping systems that enabled efficient administration of large and complex political entities. Though the limited survival of administrative records makes it difficult to reconstruct the details of these systems, the religious legitimation of political authority in Thracian society was based on concepts of divine kingship and hero cult that portrayed rulers as having special relationships with the gods and the ability to communicate divine will to their subjects, with archaeological evidence from royal burial sites and religious sanctuaries indicating elaborate ceremonial programs that serve to reinforce royal authority, while also providing religious services to the broader population. The urban development associated with Thracian political centers reveals planning concepts that incorporated both practical administrative requirements and symbolic representations of political power, with sites such as Southopolis displaying sophisticated urban planning that included residential quarters for different social classes, craft production areas, commercial districts, and ceremonial spaces that serve the various functions required for political and economic administration. The integration of conquered or tributary territories into Thracian political entities appears to have been based on flexible arrangements that allowed local communities to maintain their traditional customs and leadership structures, while accepting Thracian political authority and tribute obligations, with evidence suggesting that successful Thracian rulers were able to create political entities that encompass diverse ethnic and cultural groups while maintaining overall political unity and military effectiveness. The decline of Thracian political independence was caused by a combination of internal factors, including succession disputes and social conflicts, and external pressures including Macedonian military expansion and Roman imperial expansion, with evidence indicating that the traditional Thracian political system was unable to adapt to the changing political and military conditions of the Hellenistic and Roman periods. Though Thracian political traditions continued to influence local administration and social organization even under foreign rule, the legacy of Thracian political organization can be seen in the administrative structures established by later rulers in the same territories, with evidence suggesting that Roman provincial administration incorporated elements of traditional Thracian governmental practices while also introducing new administrative concepts and institutions that reflected Roman political and legal traditions, creating hybrid governmental systems that combined elements from multiple political traditions. The economic systems and trade networks of the Thracian tribes encompassed a complex array of productive activities, commercial relationships, and exchange mechanisms that connected the Thracian territories with economic networks, spanning from the Baltic Sea to the Mediterranean and from Central Europe to Central Asia, creating prosperity that supported the sophisticated political and cultural achievements that characterized Thracian civilization throughout its long historical development. The agricultural foundations of Thracian economic life were based on mixed farming systems that combined crop cultivation with animal husbandry, with archaeobotanical studies revealing the cultivation of wheat, barley, millet, oats, and various legumes, while archaeological analysis indicates the raising of cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and horses, with evidence suggesting that Thracian agricultural techniques were well adapted to the diverse environmental conditions of their territories, and capable of producing substantial surpluses for trade and tribute obligations. The mining and metallurgical activities that formed a crucial component of Thracian economic life were centered on the exploitation of rich gold deposits in the Pangaian Hills and other locations, silver mines in the Rhodop Mountains, copper deposits throughout the Thracian territories, and iron ores that provided the raw materials for both utilitarian and luxury metalwork, with archaeological investigation of ancient mining sites revealing sophisticated extraction techniques, smelting facilities, and evidence of large-scale production activities that generated wealth that supported Thracian political and military activities. The craft production systems of Thracian economic organization encompass specialized workshops that produce pottery, metalwork, textiles, leather goods, woodwork, and other manufactured items for both local consumption and export trade, with archaeological evidence indicating the existence of production centers that serve regional and international markets while also meeting the demands of local communities for everyday goods and luxury items. The commercial networks that connected Thracian producers with consumers throughout the ancient world were based on both overland trade routes that followed river valleys, and mountain passes, and maritime trade relationships that utilized Black Sea and Aegean seaports, with evidence indicating that Thracian merchants and traders were active participants in commercial networks that extended from northern Europe to the eastern Mediterranean and facilitated the exchange of raw materials, manufactured goods, and luxury items across vast distances. The monetary systems employed in Thracian economic relationships included both coin money issued by Thracian rulers following Greek weight standards, and iconographic conventions, and various forms of commodity money including precious metal, objects, livestock, and other valuable goods that served as media of exchange in commercial transactions, with numismatic evidence indicating sophisticated understanding of monetary principles and commercial practices that facilitated both local and international trade activities. The tribute and taxation systems that supported Thracian political entities were based on obligations imposed on subject communities to provide specified quantities of agricultural products, livestock, manufactured goods, precious metals, and military service, with evidence suggesting that these systems were flexible enough to accommodate local conditions and capabilities while generating sufficient resources to support royal courts, military forces, and administrative apparatus. The labor systems that supported Thracian economic activities included free farmers and craftsmen who owned their own land and tools, dependent workers who provided labor services in exchange for protection and subsistence, and slaves who were acquired through military campaigns and commercial transactions, and employed in various productive activities including mining, agriculture, and craft production. The market systems and commercial institutions that facilitated Thracian economic life included periodic markets held at political and religious centers, permanent commercial establishments in urban settlements, and specialized trading relationships between producers and merchants that enabled efficient distribution of goods and services throughout the Thracian territories and beyond. The technological innovations associated with Thracian economic development include improvements in agricultural techniques such as iron plowshares and improved crop rotation systems, advances in metallurgical processes that increase the efficiency and quality of metal production, developments in transportation technology including improvements in cart construction and road building, and innovations in craft production techniques that enhance the quality and quantity of manufactured goods. The economic relationships between Thracian communities and Greek colonial cities along the Black Sea coast involved complex arrangements that included the supply of agricultural products and raw materials by Thracian producers, the provision of manufactured goods and luxury items by Greek merchants, and various forms of cooperation in commercial and military activities that benefited both parties, while sometimes creating tensions and conflicts over territorial control and commercial rights. The seasonal patterns of Thracian economic activity were determined by agricultural cycles that required intensive labor during planting and harvest seasons, pastoral activities that involved seasonal movement of livestock to different grazing areas, and craft production activities that were often concentrated during periods when agricultural labor demands were reduced, with evidence suggesting sophisticated coordination of different economic activities to maximize productivity and efficiency. The storage and distribution systems that supported Thracian economic organization included granaries and warehouses located at administrative centers, specialized storage facilities associated with religious sanctuaries, and household storage systems that enabled communities to maintain food security and manage seasonal variations in production and consumption, with archaeological evidence indicating sophisticated understanding of storage techniques and preservation methods. The economic impact of military activities in Thracian society included both the costs associated with maintaining military forces and fortifications, and the benefits derived from successful military campaigns that generated booty, tribute, and territorial expansion, with evidence suggesting that military considerations played an important role in economic planning, and that successful military leaders were able to generate resources that supported further military and political activities. The regional specialization within Thracian economic systems reflected the diverse natural resources and environmental conditions of different territories, with evidence indicating that certain regions specialize in particular types of production, while participating in exchange networks that enabled access to goods and materials produced in other regions, creating economic integration that supported political unity, while also creating interdependencies that could be sources of both strength and vulnerability. The long-term economic development of Thracian territories can be traced through changes in settlement patterns, production techniques, and trade relationships over time, with evidence indicating periods of economic expansion and prosperity alternating with periods of decline and disruption caused by political instability, military conflicts, and changes in broader regional and international economic conditions that affected the demand for Thracian products and the availability of foreign goods and materials. The interactions between Thracian tribes and neighboring civilizations, particularly the Greek city-states, Persian Empire, Scythian peoples, and eventually the expanding Roman Republic, created a complex web of cultural exchange, military conflict, diplomatic relationships, and economic cooperation that profoundly influenced the development of Thracian civilization, while also contributing to broader patterns of cultural and political change throughout southeastern Europe and the eastern Mediterranean region. The relationships between Thracian tribes and Greek colonial cities established along the Black Sea and Aegean coasts beginning in the 8th century BC involved both cooperation and conflict, with Greek colonists requiring Thracian agricultural products and raw materials while Thracian communities sought access to Greek manufactured goods, technologies, and cultural innovations, leading to extensive cultural exchange that influenced both societies in areas ranging from artistic styles and religious practices to military techniques and political organization. The archaeological evidence for Greek-Thracian cultural interaction includes the discovery of Greek pottery and other manufactured goods in Thracian settlement sites, Thracian artistic motifs and techniques appearing in Greek colonial art, the adoption of Greek architectural elements in Thracian construction projects, and the synthesis of Greek and Thracian religious practices in cult sites, located in areas of cultural contact, demonstrating the complex and multifaceted nature of these cultural relationships. The military relationships between Thracian and Greek communities involve both conflict over territorial control and commercial rights, and cooperation in military campaigns, where Thracian warriors served as mercenaries for Greek city-states, while Greek military advisors and equipment were employed by Thracian rulers, with historical sources documenting numerous examples of both hostile encounters and military alliances that reflected the pragmatic and opportunistic nature of these relationships. The involvement of Thracian forces in major Greek military conflicts such as the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian War demonstrates the significant military capabilities of Thracian armies and their importance in the strategic calculations of major Greek powers, with Thracian cavalry and light infantry proving particularly valuable in campaigns that required mobility and adaptation to varied terrain conditions. The diplomatic relationships between Thracian rulers and the Persian Empire, particularly during the period of Persian expansion into southeastern Europe under Darius I and Xerxes, involved complex negotiations regarding tribute obligations, territorial control,